Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and I'm joined today by my fellow friend and film buff, my corrupted co-host, the diabolical Darren.
Hi, I'm always happy to be really looking forward to talking about Don't Look Now.
And spoiler alert, he's just told us what film we're going to be talking about today. And that is 1973's Don't Look Now, directed by Nicholas Roeg. Very much, I think, one of the greatest psychological horror films of all time, starring Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. And what was your introduction to this film, Darren? How old do you think you were when you first saw this?
Right, so this was like I'm UK TV going back from when I was about 8, 9, 10. This was regularly shown, and I'm talking, this was shown 2, 3 times a year. So being young and that, I sort of would flick through the channels, see it on there, and not, pretty much try and skip it. But then one day I thought, it must have been about 15, 16. I thought I'll give this a go, and then I just fell in love with it ever since,
Yeah. This is a film that I'll admit, my mother never used to let me watch horror films as a child, yet my grandmother would. And I used to watch a lot of horror films at my grandmother. I really hold my grandmother responsible for me being in love with horror movies. I think she's got a lot to answer for, to be quite honest. And I always remember there being a specific scene in a film, now we're going to talk about this scene later, that absolutely terrified me as a young child. I actually had nightmares for
obviously
a
you're
couple
talking
of nights.
About the end.
Yes, there was a particular scene. Now, as a young child, I had no idea what this film was, actually. And it is literally the only scene I remember from the entire movie. Now, as I got older, I become more and more a horror fan, and I was about at the age of 14, 15 years old. I actually finally realised what movie that scene was from. Don't Look Now. And it's a film that, yes, I bought almost immediately on DVD, and it's a film that I have fallen in love with. It is a film that certainly has received a lot of appreciation and recognition over the years. It's very much considered to be a classic now.
Yeah, I think on initial, response to it was quite lukewarm. It was thought of as being okay.
Yeah.
And the director says, funny enough, in his commentary track that in recent years, I think he's passed away now, but in recent years, it's got a lot of, appraisal and, maybe even a new generation of audiences starting to see it now and appreciate for what it is.
Yeah, it was actually, directed by British director Nicholas Roeg. It was actually his third film. His first movie was Performance, then he directed Walkabout the following year. And this is regarded by many to be his best film. He actually did direct a movie that I love, that I actually think is one of the best Roald Dahl adaptations. He directed 1990's The Witches, starring Angelica Huston.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, he actually directed that. But yeah, he did actually pass away back in 2018, I believe it was. He started off his career as a cinematographer and editor. He'd worked on the likes of The Mask of the Red Death, before becoming a film director. And Don't Look Now, the story. Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland, they're a married couple. They travel to Venice, don't they, following the recent accidental death of their daughter. It's basically his job to restore a church. And they encounter two sisters, don't they? One of which is a clairvoyant.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, it's adapted from a Daphne du Maurier short story.
It is, and I believe it's the eighth adaptation of a Daphne du Maurier story. The Birds being one.
Yeah, I was going to say, and there was another Hitchcock one she'd done as well, Rebecca.
Rebecca, I believe, and also Jamaica Inn was also based on a Daphne du Maurier
and
story.
That was another Hitchcock film then?
It was, yeah.
Oh, right, I've never seen that. I never heard of that one.
Yeah, this was actually the 8th adaptation. And of course, The Birds, one of Hitchcock's classics, 1963, a whole 10 years before this came out. So basically, yeah, they go to Venice, and of course, they meet two sisters, one of which is a clairvoyant and informs them that their daughter is trying to contact them and warn them of danger. At its core, this film is more than just a horror movie. This is a film that's really about grief. This is a film about loss, grief, and preordained fate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the director said in the commentary track. It's obviously we start off the film with the tragedy of a little girl.
Yeah.
You've got her parents in the house, the ones working on his slides, and the other, her mother's reading and that. You've got two kids playing out the back. And then the father gets some sense of, like, premonition that something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And he rushes out, but he manages to just be too late to save his little girl. It's a really harrowing scene. And it's played, to perfection by Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, I think this is one of Donald Sutherland's best film roles. As you say, the opening to this film really is quite harrowing. It's quite a striking image. This film has a lot of striking imagery, in fact. Their young blonde-haired daughter wearing a red shiny Mac, and of course, yeah, she drowns. And as you said, Donald Sutherland has this kind of realization that something's not quite right. And he runs out there. And obviously there's a moment later on in the film with his wife actually talking to the two ladies that they meet. And she actually says it's almost as if he knew something was wrong.
Yeah. He definitely has psychic ability, but he's really not, bringing it on board with him. He's basically a skeptic of even in his own, psychic abilities.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we'll come on to things later, but it will result in badly for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of, obviously, pieces in this movie that really kind of connect together. And, as you said, with the opening to this film, with the death of their daughter, it really, sets the movie in motion. This is really about a couple who have probably lost their way somewhat in their relationship, in their marriage, due to the death of their daughter. Now, there's a lot, as I said, there's a lot of actually kind of motives in this film. Now, there was actually, I know in the original story, Christine, their daughter, actually died of meningitis. They were actually in Venice already.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, Nicholas Roeg didn't want that, and there's a kind of a running motif of water, which is why the death is different in the movie. She actually drowns, and of course, they go to Venice, a city which is surrounded by water.
Yeah. Also in the book, there's not so much emphasis on John's psychic ability.
No.
So, but as with Venice, it's just a great backdrop with the water, and you've got the alleyways, you've got the darkly lit alleyways, and then in contrast to that, you've got the really bright sunshine of the film.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, Venice makes for the setting to this film is just fantastic. Nicholas Roeg makes the most of the location in this film. It's almost like Venice is actually a character in itself. As you said, the kind of very labyrinth-esque alleyways, the old kind of ruined buildings. There's a very kind of dark, subtle beauty to it. And now, getting back quickly to the opening scene of this film as well, there are actually some common things that actually happen in this film that are actually quite easy to miss upon a first viewing, certainly. There's actually kind of an emphasis on falling in this movie. It's something that's quite ever present. Now, Christine falls into the lake. Laura takes a fall after her fall in the restaurant. The son Johnny is injured in a fall at the boarding school. They actually get a telephone call saying that he's had a nasty fall. Even the bishop, who's overseeing the church restoration, informs John, Sutherland's character, that his father was killed in a fall. And even John himself is nearly killed in a fall during renovating.
So this is like my second favourite film, and do you know what? I've never really ever picked up on that. So that's really interesting.
It is, and also glass is frequently used as an omen that something bad is about to occur. Just before Christine drowns, John actually knocks a glass of water over. And I think Johnny actually breaks a pane of glass on his bike, doesn't he? Rides over a pane of glass.
Yeah, that's right.
Laura, when she faints in the restaurant, I'm pretty certain she actually knocks glassware off the table.
Yes, she does, yeah.
And John, when he nearly falls to his death, a plank of wood actually shatters a pane of glass as well.
Yes, again, that's, it's certainly no coincidence.
No.
He certainly had that in mind, to be doing, to put in all these things into the film.
Yeah.
But funny enough, going back to that first scene, was the part with the slide, where we see this small figure, in red.
Yeah.
And we don't, at that stage, we don't know what it's going to be or the outcome of it.
Yeah, it's, I believe it's paint, isn't it? Isn't it paint that's...
I think it's paint, or I don't think it's a drink. It might have been a drink. Was it red wine, or it's something like that?
Yeah, and we get this kind of nondescript, kind of image on this paint. And then, of course, after the death of Christine, of course, it kind of trickles across the entire photograph. Now, this is very much symbolic. This is very much, spoiler alert, I'm assuming anyone listening to this has seen the film anyway. But of course, this all kind of adds up. This is John, without realising, or should I say fully adhering to what he has, he's actually seeing his future here.
Exactly, and there's clues throughout the film again. Like as in most, because I will, we'll come on to this, but I do regard this as a giallo, really. But as in Argento, De Palma, you get clues throughout the film, and it's very clever in the way it does it as well. It's Go on.
There's certainly more to the film than the first appears. It's one of them films. I know it's a film that's very often analysed. Nicholas Roeg has been heavily praised for, his artistic template, if you will, in this movie. As you said, there's a lot of clues kind of peppered throughout. But yeah, at its core, this is a film that really, it's about grief. It really is. A perfectly believable relationship between Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland in this film. They really do carry this movie, and as well as the atmosphere as well.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the chemistry between the two of them is absolutely electric. It was like a happy accident. I don't know. They just seemed to get on. Maybe offset and that, but you can tell there's some sort of chemistry between them.
Well, this was actually the first time they'd ever actually met and worked together in this film as well. But yeah, there's just a great sense of atmosphere in this movie. There's just a sense of dread that seems to permit this film from start to finish.
I was reading up, and they said that before them two were going to come in for the roles, they were thinking about Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood.
Yes.
I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
That would have been strange. I don't think that would have worked half as good as what the original has.
No, they almost couldn't take it. They almost couldn't take the roles to other commitments. And, it's impossible, let's face it, it's impossible to talk about this film without talking about the sex scene.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which
it's very infamous scene.
This film has really become famous for two things: the ending and the sex scene, which actually caused a lot of controversy prior to its release. This was described as being one of the frankest love scenes to ever be filmed, and it was kind of unusually graphic for the period, and. Not to, because we're not. This isn't a porn podcast or anything like this. But this film actually had a very rare depiction of how do I word this? Cunnilingus in a mainstream film, which was very daring for its time. And
I think with the scene, I think it's shot so beautifully that I don't even think while watching it, you even like think, this is pornographic or anything like that,
No.
because it's so stylishly done with the music in the background.
Yeah.
And then you've got the intercutting of them getting ready for dinner afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's not done crudely, or it's not done for titillation or anything like that.
No, what we're seeing here is and there's a real level of authenticity to it. What we're seeing is a real what feels to be real and certainly looks to be real is a lovemaking session between a married couple who clearly, have lost their way maybe, since obviously the death of their daughter, and presumably this may be the first time they've actually had intercourse since the death of Christine.
I think that's what the intention was in the film, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's even, a slight suspicion that she may become pregnant through it as we go on into the film.
Yeah. It remained controversial for some years, and the BBC, when they actually aired this film, they cut it all together, which actually caused, I think, a flood of complaints from people.
I think it's like widely renowned for people thinking that they actually had sex, but it's been debunked since.
Yeah, there were rumours, and again, it comes down to, this film is masterfully made. This film is really well filmed, and the intimacy of the scene, it led to a lot of rumours that they actually had sex. And that apparently there were rumours going around. There were outtakes from the scene, doing the rounds in screening rooms and all that. But that's just a testament to Nicholas Roeg's filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a level of authenticity, and from what I understand as well, it was the first scene that Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie actually filmed together. Nicholas Roeg wanted to get that scene out of the way. And
I think they did it on a closed set as well, didn't they?
They did. And they said it was a nightmare. That Sutherland and Julie Christie, there was no eroticness there. There was nothing pleasurable about it. It was very tough because they were doing this scene and Nicholas Roeg's like, kiss her breasts, do this now. And it was a very awkward scene for both actors.
But you wouldn't think so looking back, watching it back.
No.
It does look very natural.
And it was a last minute thing. Believe it or not, it was kind of a last minute scene, in fact, as well, because Nicholas Roeg had actually said Nicholas Roeg did not want the movie to be them arguing from like scene to scene. He wanted there to be a scene that had some real emotional depth to it, and the love-making scene is what he come up with.
Like you say, it was last minute, I think, just to try and evolve the story a little bit more.
Yeah. So obviously, the death of their daughter in the opening, it really is quite harrowing. And I believe that also caused, it was tough to do, because of the little girl. She'd actually been spending, I think, a lot of time in water, preparing herself for the scene and that, but it was very hard, very tough.
I think they used 3 girls for it. I think they used one girl that shot some one part of the scene and never came back on the next day.
Okay.
He shot the blonde girl who's running around, who we see a lot, but she was scared of water apparently, so they had to have another stand in to do the water scene, actually in the water. So
because I think she was the original girl was actually hysterical, wasn't she? I think she was like, despite the rehearsals, they were going well, but when it actually came down to filming it, I could imagine, that was a real tough scene to do and to film, certainly due to the subject matter.
It's very difficult to watch that scene.
It really sets the film up, and of course, let's just say that Pino Donaggio, this was the first film he ever scored,
and it was purely by chance that they got him.
Yeah,
because he was teaching in Venice at the time.
Yeah,
teaching music to students, I think, and then just purely by chance, he got to meet Nicholas Roeg, who said he was doing a film and needed someone to score a film.
Yeah. And
then they got talking, they got on really well, and there's a lot of happy accidents that happened throughout this film, mind.
Yeah. He couldn't believe, He couldn't believe because he'd had no interest in making soundtracks for films at the time, and he just thought that basically, why are they going to want a guy that's never actually scored a movie before?
And the director, Nicholas Roeg, he actually said that there's so many things that happened in the making of this film through fate,
Yeah,
and it's so ironic that the film is about
it is
fate.
about fate. Yeah,
So you just said it just all come together, and
yeah.
you're just really pleased that everything worked out the way it did.
Yeah, they were really pleased with his work, and they basically, as well as composing the score, I think he actually performed a substantial portion of it as well. I mean,
Oh, it's haunting, isn't it? The
it is,
scores,
yeah. The
it's
piano,
haunting.
they accompany their moments where we actually see. Let's quickly get on about these moments. Now, obviously, Christine is wearing a red mac when she drowns, and of
Yeah,
course, we hear, during the course of the movie, there's some murders happening in Venice. We see some bodies actually being fished out of the water. And there's actually a figure in a red coat that is actually seen during a few scenes that John sees.
yeah, linked to the murders. Yeah,
Well, we don't realise they're linked to the murders. He
it's
believes in his mind that obviously it's his daughter, because obviously they're told, the scene in which they meet the psychic, the two sisters, she actually tells the mother, doesn't she, that your daughter is happy. She's sitting there with you. Don't be sad. She's really happy.
yeah, and like just going back to like the murders, you said it's more of like an undercurrent of the film. It's not really.
The movie doesn't focus on them. No.
No, not until the end, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say with the psychics, so they've gone out to dinner and they meet these two very strange old ladies. One of them being a blind psychic.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but the not the blind one, the other one put the chills at me for some reason. She's really strange, really creepy.
Yeah.
And when you're watching now when you're younger,
there is a sense of unease with the scenes. It's kind of creepy in a way because she tells her that your daughter is still with you. She's happy. She's laughing, etc. And of course, Julie Christie's character, the mother, actually, believes this. She has some faith, and whereas John is a complete disbeliever. He actually turns to his wife and he says, "Look, she's dead.
Exactly.
Our daughter is dead."
And it does ultimately it does lead to his death by non-believing.
Yeah, and basically, and then we of course get a warning. She's basically, the daughter is trying to communicate through the medium, the blind lady, who says it's not all about ectoplasm and all this and that and whatever. And she tells him that, that it's the daughter contacting through her, that you're in danger. You must leave Venice. Leave. And of course, he doesn't believe any of this. In his mind, this is all hocus pocus. And of course, there's actually a scene which I believe actually he did almost have a serious accident. It's the scene in which he nearly falls to his death.
Oh, when he's up with the mosaic.
Yeah, he's restoring the mosaic, and
that scene is incredible.
Yeah.
Did you realise that the actual the guy who was the stand-in to do that was so freaked out that the stuntman didn't even do the stunt. They had to leave it for Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, he ended up doing it, and he was attached to, I think, like a wire as a precaution in case he falled.
Which that wire would not have worked either, apparently.
No, that's true. And apparently the twirling with the wire, it caused holding onto the rope, it damaged the wire. Basically, he would have nearly died. He would have almost died performing his own stunt there in that scene.
That's like another freaky part of the film.
Yeah,
really,
and it also comes down to the fact of this happens not long after he's told that he's in danger. He must leave Venice.
Well, I don't know about you, but if that was me, I would be gone.
All for the name of work, all for the name of money.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
But he doesn't believe all this. Yeah, he doesn't believe all this stuff, and that's ultimately, how he ends up in the situation he ends up, and it really is quite tragic. Because obviously there is a scene in this film where obviously his wife actually goes back to England. They receive a telephone call. Their son has had a nasty fall. She goes back, and it's not long afterwards that he actually sees his wife on a boat with the two ladies.
Yeah, some kind of premonition.
Well,
He
yeah,
doesn't know that,
he
obviously.
doesn't
He just
realise that.
believes, yeah, he believes that he's seen them, and he cannot understand why he can't get hold of her or why she's back in the country.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, they speak on the phone, and he realizes that she's been in England all along. So he's really confused.
Yeah, he believes that his wife is actually, and then he ultimately he feels as though they're responsible. They've done something to his wife. That they've got the answer or something because yeah, he sees them on the river, and he becomes convinced that obviously his wife is still in Venice. But the real moment, the WTF moment comes when he actually phones up England and she's put on the telephone.
Yeah, it takes him totally by surprise.
So it's like he was never expecting for her to be there because he's only just seen her just a little while ago in Venice.
So then he contacts the police then, and they try to track down the two ladies, the older ladies,
Yeah,
which he does some sort of like sketch of
yeah,
her,
yeah.
policeman, which is quite funny. Don't think that's to be taken too seriously.
No.
And yeah, go on, sorry.
Well, the police officer actually as well. Did you know that he couldn't actually speak a word of English?
No, I didn't know
He
that.
knew
I knew
no
there's
English. He had no idea what he was talking about.
he did
And
he does do a good job, that police officer. Mine does. He is quite I don't know what the word is.
well, it adds to a
Uh,
sense of kind of almost creepiness, if you will, because yeah, he's
yes,
actually
like
reading all of
suspicion.
he's reading all of these
Yeah,
words that he doesn't actually know the meaning of or anything, but he couldn't actually speak any English whatsoever. It was all written for him.
right. I
Um,
didn't know that.
and yeah, speaking of getting back quickly to the setting, I don't think Venice has ever looked creepier in a film. Obviously, we had a giallo released in '72, just the year before. Who Saw Her Die, starring one-time Bond actor George Lazenby. A pretty good giallo. But yeah,
Yeah, that starred Nicola, uh, the girl from Deep Red as well.
yes, that's right.
Nicoletta Elmi, if I believe, right?
Yep, Argento's wife. And yeah, with Don't Look Now as well. That it makes great use of the setting. Um, we also get this kind of undercurrent sense of, like you said, with the murders. The movie doesn't focus on these murders, so you never really feel like what happens at the end. You never really kind of connect the dots, or I didn't anyway. The kind of this
No, you
red
don't
figure
really think it's
is
part of the plot.
he believes it's Christine. Maybe there's a sense of belief that he believes that Christine is, he's following. He ends up chasing. There's a scene, isn't there, a little earlier where he actually walks down this alleyway, and if I recall, he says something like, "I know this place. I've been here."
Yeah, deja vu.
He's getting that sense of deja vu that he's actually been there before, despite the fact he never has. And
Yeah, he's foreseeing his murder. I think it's all leading up. He's getting all the clues, and he's foreseeing his murder.
yeah, because it's actually the place where he's actually killed. It's around that location, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
it's yeah, really. Like this film, there's so much going on that like a one-time watch would not be very good. I've watched this film dozens of times, and I still find something new in it every time.
yeah,
It's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and it's more. Have you noticed as well that there's not really a massive amount of dialogue? It's all a lot of it's done with visuals.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of, from what I understand as well, there's red and green appear in nearly every scene as well. There's actually a use of colour in a lot of scenes, which again, it doesn't bash you across the head with it, but apparently it's a running theme throughout the film.
Yeah, yeah,
But it
absolutely
really
is.
is actually quite subtle. And, to quickly talk about, Pino Donaggio quickly, just to quickly get back to him. He's not an accomplished piano player, so he was a little bit hesitant about playing the piano for this film, but he did a great job with the
Yeah, I
score
think
in this film.
for it to be his first ever score,
Yeah.
I find quite incredible because I think De Palma, seen this film and then went on and used him as his regular composer.
Yeah.
That's how much he was impressed by this film.
Great music for Carrie. Great music for Carrie, and of course, yes, also scoring Dressed to Kill, again, a really good score to that. Yeah, one of the best composers, I think, actually, of his time. Probably one. He's not the John Williams. He's not the maybe the James Horner or the his name's actually escaping me. Yeah, Morricone or Hans Zimmer. Yeah. Probably not as well known in name, but Pino Donaggio actually did churn out some really good scores for films, and
the amount of scores he's churned out as well is phenomenal.
Yeah, very, very prolific. I mean, John Williams is hands down, the biggest name composer out there, without a doubt. No composer in the history of Hollywood has ever composed more iconic scores than John Williams. Everything from the likes of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, the list goes on. Jaws, of course. So let's quickly get on to, the climax of this film, and the scene that obviously I remember as a kid that actually gave me nightmares is John's death. Now, John obviously chases this small figure wearing the red coat, and at this point in the movie, the tension is just impalpable.
Oh yeah,
it's got the atmosphere. Something's not right. Something bad's going to happen. This is really creepy. This is really atmospheric. The climax of the film, and obviously he corners this small red figure, this figure wearing this red coat, and we hear like this kind of whimpering. It sounds like a child crying, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, going back to Argento, I think Phenomena's pinched quite a lot out of this film. You've got the kid in the corner whimpering. But yeah, the atmosphere of these final scenes, you've got the fog, like, it's just fantastic. I would put it possibly one of the greatest endings of all time, and I don't play that down lightly,
Yeah. And then, of course, they turn around, and it's this... this isn't me being prejudiced or anything like that, but a creepy-looking dwarf woman.
Yeah, I think you can say dwarf nowadays.
Yeah, very creepy. With a razor, and of course, he gets his throat cut, and of course, the blood starts trickling out, and of course, it all comes down to symbolism. Again, we see the red figure, which, presumably paint, whatever it is, earlier on in the film, and we see that, and obviously that trickled paint, and that's, of course, the blood that's actually gushing out of John now. It really is just a horrible moment.
Once you see the image of the killer, you will never get that out of your head again.
No, and that's what gave me nightmares. It was the image of the dwarf turning around, but the whole kind of build-up that actually leads on to it. It's just really creepy. And of course, what we realise very soon afterwards is that when he actually saw his wife earlier in the film with the two women, he was seeing his own funeral.
That's right, yeah, on the funeral badge.
Yeah.
What's funny about this, well, not funny, but, iconic about this last scene is that the gates are locked, so she can't get to him, his wife, but she's running, towards him. And she shakes out darlings. I think she realises that, he's going to meet up again with her daughter. Yeah. I think she got, she's not psychic or anything, but she's not stupid. I think she realises what's happening.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, Rogue actually wanted Julie Christie to actually attend a séance prior to filming.
Yeah, that's right. They did actually attend one.
Yeah.
In London, I think. And yeah, that's, séances freak me out. And certainly when they're in films, they are, if done well.
Yeah.
And I think with this film, it does that séance scene really well.
Yeah.
Because you've got the blind lady who just absolutely freaks. She just freaks out, doesn't she?
Well, there's a scene actually, quickly actually getting back to her sister, who you talked about earlier. There are some sense of unease in this film. For example, there is a scene where they're laughing. We see them laughing and they're holding a picture, and you think to yourself, it implies to me when you watch it, hang on a sec, are they hoaxers? Are they taking this woman?
Yeah. Funny enough, I've spoken to a few people about the film, and they've never mentioned that, or I've never heard it mentioned before. But I've always thought to myself, are they taking the piss? You know?
Yeah, they're laughing. It's a quick scene. It's only a few seconds, but they're laughing almost uncontrollably. And it's you sit and you're like, what are they laughing at? What are they
Yeah.
laughing at here? And then you think to yourself, are they hoaxers? Is there something? You know, is this all a charade? And
I
that's
wonder
certainly
if
what
that
made me
scene is.
think.
Yeah, I wonder if that scene's put in there to make you think that because I like exactly like you. I thought, I'd like to think they
Yeah.
weren't hoaxes,
And
but
then, of course, they do kind of a disappearing act as well. And you kind of think to yourself, hang on a sec, what's actually going on here? Can these women actually be trusted? And the thing is also, as well, and again, it comes down to symbolism. There's actually just a quick little moment in the movie as well, which kind of harks back to Christine's death at the beginning of the film, is which he finds a baby doll in the water.
that's right. Yeah,
Again, much like his own daughter.
exactly. I think that symbolizes, a little girl, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I picked up on that as well.
Do you realise that the red coat figure,
right.
the
Yeah,
dwarf, that I had absolutely no idea who this woman was, who they actually cast in this role, but she was actually a singer,
yeah.
4'2" tall.
What's her name? Adelina.
Yeah, Adelina
Pieva.
Poero, I believe. I
That's
think
right.
I'm pronouncing that correct, and it's
That's easy
quite
for you
fun.
to say.
Yeah, it's quite funny actually because this film set in Venice, British production obviously, but filmed in Venice and that, and the Venetians really weren't too keen on the fact of this getting its release, etc., because they really felt like tourism might go downhill after this movie.
Well, the director actually said, because someone brought up to him about the scenes in Venice.
Yeah.
There's very sparsely, there's hardly any other people around.
No, yeah.
But he said Venice at the time was literally like that.
Yeah.
Even though it's a tourist place and all that, but he said there's times in Venice where everyone's just indoors or looking out their windows and stuff like that. He said it's not really, a massive population walking around and all that, which was brilliant for the film, really.
Yeah. Just the committee were worried. The committee were somewhat worried, much like I suppose were Hostel Bratislava. Now I'm not actually sure if it was filmed in Bratislava, but Hostel set in Bratislava. It probably doesn't do much for the Slovakian tourist trade. And I think the committee in Venice were a bit worried, that Venice is supposed to be a place of beauty, and then we're seeing dead bodies fished out of water. And but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is with Nicholas Roeg as well. From what I understand of him, he's a director renowned for his kind of, distinct editing style and his like recurring motifs and that. And as I said, he came from a cinematography background and editing background, and this movie again, it kind of comes back to the sex scene. The editing is fantastic because it's like you said. It cuts from the actual the love making to them getting ready to go out for dinner.
Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of his films, but I do understand that he does use that in a few of them.
Yeah.
I think didn't even De Palma do that a couple of times? I'm not saying
not possibly not off the top of my head. There's nothing that I can really think of at the top.
I suppose
of my head
with De Palma it was more split screen, wasn't it? But
yeah, he had his own kind of distinct filming styles. Nicholas Roeg is actually considered to be one of the best British directors of his time. Again, unless you're a big film buff, he's not probably the household name.
How many films have you seen that he's directed then?
Nicholas Roeg, 4.
I think I've seen Walkabout.
Well, he directed The Last Man on Earth in '76, starring the legend David Bowie as well.
That's right, yeah.
Admittedly, it's been a long time since I've actually seen that film, and I wasn't even aware until a couple of years back that he directed The Witches, which
you said earlier
I loved as a kid growing up, but at the same time it terrified me. The Witches is I wouldn't even really call it a kids film. It's a pretty scary little movie.
Yeah, that don't surprise me, after watching it.
Yeah, with great practical effects, I will say. I have no interest in watching the new one, to be honest, with Anne Hathaway. I don't really think I've got much interest in actually seeing that. But did you know that Donald Sutherland actually named his son Rogue after Nicholas Rogue?
No, I had no idea of that.
Yeah, he's his favourite collaborator. I believe Sutherland actually said something along the lines of the directors he worked with, Nicholas Rogue was his favourite.
Right, because I know during pre-production, or it might have been during the start of the film, that he did have an issue with Rogue at one stage, and he said to Rogue basically, "I don't think this needs as much psychic angle as you're putting into it."
Yeah.
And Nicholas Rogue took him aside and said, "Look, you shoot the scenes my way,
Yeah.
or you can go." And I think he respected him after that.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was clear sailing. They got on really well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, this film, I mean, also as well, I don't know if you know, but again, I didn't actually know this until quite recently, but when this was shown, it was actually the main feature of a double bill. This film was actually paired up with The Wicker Man.
Yeah, I did read that, and it's funny because they both got some. In some ways, they're quite similar.
They are.
Really.
Yeah, they both feature protagonists, for one, who believe they're in pursuit of a missing child.
That's right, yeah.
And The Wicker Man, again, is another British horror classic.
I would love to have seen that in the cinema.
Yeah, one of the most iconic endings, I think, in the history of horror, with The Wicker Man. So two great British horror films, both released in the same year. 2006 is The Wicker Man. We're not going to talk about that. Starring my guilty pleasure, Nicolas Cage. I think the 2006 The Wicker Man is a terrible film, but you know what? I love it because it's so goddamn bad. It's so
comedy,
unintentionally hilarious. It tries to take itself seriously, but hey?
My mate seen it in the cinema and he warned me off going.
Yeah, a remake was completely and utterly unnecessary for one, and you got someone like Nicolas Cage in with some CGBs. But if you ever want to watch Nicolas Cage dressed up as an animal punching a woman out, it's the film to watch.
All right, that's duly noted then.
But
yeah, coming on to Donald Sutherland again. Did you realise that he starred in another Giallo-esque film in 1971 called Clute?
Do you know what? I know of the film. I've known of its existence for a long time, but I've never seen it. I've never actually watched it.
Oh my God, you've got to see that.
Yeah, I've
got a special edition Blu-ray, and it's basically shot in like New York, and it's like it's got Giallo written all over it. It's like a serial killer, and yeah, you need to watch that.
Well, Donald Sutherland was in another horror film that I'm actually a big fan of from the 70s. It was released in 78, and that is Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
That's one I've never seen.
Oh, no. You've not seen the 78 remake?
No. Yeah, I've got a couple of blind spots, and that's one of them.
Yeah, I actually think, because, I mean, the original 1956 film is a sci-fi classic, it goes without saying, but the 78 film, as remakes go, it's one of the very best, and I think it holds up well to the original movie. Kevin McCarthy, the lead actor from the original, actually makes a cameo in the remake, and you've got Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum, Veronica Cartwright, Leonard Nimoy, Spock himself's in there, with a bleak ending. Do you know the ending to it?
I think I've seen the ending. I couldn't tell you offhand.
Okay, it's a gut punch. It's a pretty gut punch ending. It's a pretty bleak ending. But I love Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well. But yeah, Daphne du Maurier as well actually wrote a letter to Nicolas Roeg after seeing the film, and she actually congratulated him on making such a great film from her story. Yeah,
and which is quite usually they don't, authors don't really like their adaptations, do they? Famously Stephen King.
The Shining, he actually has publicly stated that, hasn't he? He really doesn't like The Shining because Kubrick...
he loves the bloody, the remake, but that's another story.
The TV film, he was actually on board with that one, had a lot of creative input. He didn't like the fact that obviously Kubrick essentially turned it into his own thing. And I love them both. I love the novel and I love the film for different reasons. But so that was quite a praise there from the very writer of the story.
The
actually
actual
saying,
story is it's on YouTube in like someone. I don't know if it's like a radio play or someone's just reading the book. If anyone's interested, and
mm,
it is up on YouTube.
yeah,
There are slight differences. That I wouldn't say slight. Some of them are quite big, I suppose. But as we alluded to earlier, with the two main, the meningitis aspect, and the
yeah,
girl's already dead before the
yeah.
story
I
starts.
think it works really well. I actually really like the fact that Nicholas Roeg actually changed that. I like that idea, the water motif. Her drowning in the lake. I don't mean to sound sadistic or anything like that, but how it parallels to
Yeah,
Venice.
yeah. I think that's what the author, real. I think she realized that they just took it up a level, took it up another level,
Yeah,
and she was thrilled, as you say with the letter. She was absolutely thrilled the way it turned out.
yeah. You
And
know,
who wouldn't be? This to me is an absolute masterpiece.
Yeah,
Absolute
I think it's a
masterpiece.
great movie. I think certainly it's one of the very best psychological horror films out there. It has a lot more depth to it than you first realise. It's very easy to think that this is just a horror movie, but it
Yeah.
isn't. It's basically it's chronicling, the life of a married couple here that are going through the hardest thing that could possibly be to go through, the death of a child, and to
Yeah.
hang on to hope. And you can really feel for her mother that her daughter is trying to communicate and hanging on to that to that hope. And ultimately, by Donald Sutherland's character John ignoring all of these signs, is what leads to his fate.
Yeah.
The photograph very early in the film is showing him what's to come, what's going to happen.
But we even have that sign, don't we? Venice in peril.
Yes,
And
yes.
apparently that was another happy accident that they come across during filming.
All right.
And yeah, it's quite an iconic sign, really.
Yeah. But again, kind of the another little aspect, just one little scene in the film as well that's I feel very relevant to many people that have gone abroad, is the scene where he's trying to find the two sisters. He's trying to find his wife, and there's a guy that comes out and he's basically talking in Italian to him, and he's asking him to speak English because he doesn't understand him. There's a language barrier there.
Yeah, they think he's a peeping Tom,
Yeah,
which is quite
yeah.
interesting.
Again, kind of getting back to the kind of Hitchcock kind of mistaken identity kind of thing as well, because I do believe Nicholas Roeg as well certainly had an influence from Hitchcock.
Yeah,
There are some
absolutely, absolutely.
Hitchcock. There are some Hitchcock aesthetics there, quite kind of underlying. But yeah, and that whole kind of that language barrier is scary. Somebody's talking to you, they're coming up to you, they're speaking you in a foreign language, and you don't understand them.
But wasn't he fluent in the church when he was? Do you know what I mean? I've always wondered about that. He
Yeah,
was
that
quite
is
fluent.
one thing that doesn't make complete sense to me, because he is speaking in Italian in a few scenes in the film, but all of a sudden
Yeah,
he doesn't understand what this guy is saying to him.
that would be the one. If I gotta like find any flaws, and I don't really want to, but that would be the one that I would say it doesn't quite add up
Mm,
because it's. But maybe he was just, he was obviously being accused of being a peeping Tom. He just took by surprise and just, I
yeah,
don't know, just basically trying to play dumb, saying, I
yeah.
can't understand you, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, as well, get onto the scene of, like, for example, the atmosphere of Venice itself is, I think the film does a really good job of making Venice look pretty creepy.
Oh,
Um,
it's definitely another character to the film.
yeah, and
Definitely another character.
like I said, the kind of climatic chase towards the end to me is just one of the best climaxes in the history of horror movies.
To me, I would say it is the best.
Mm,
I really find it hard, to find anything that can match it, really.
yeah,
You've got stuff like, you've got The Exorcist where he
yeah.
falls out the window, and my favorite film, obviously, Suspiria, but I don't even think that's, I think this ending beats them all.
Yeah, I think it's a really realistic depiction as well of a married couple who are going through a troublesome time, And just to give you again, just a quick little scene that to me has a sense of realism to it. There's a scene in the film where Donald Sutherland is sitting there, he's doing his work, and he's naked.
Yeah,
and is it the maid or something comes in?
Yeah, the maid comes in.
And he looks around a bit shocked. That's realistic, because the amount of... I don't know about you, right, this is probably too much information for people out there, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you're lounging around at home and stuff like that, you don't expect anyone to pop in. Sometimes you sit around in your boxes. You're just sitting around, lounging around in your box, or maybe naked. Some people do it naked, whatever. And that was just kind of realistic, because that's what a lot of guys do.
Yeah, I think it's, like you say, it's a realistic... and you buy into their relationship as well. You're on like a journey from the start, you know, right through to the end, and you buy everything. You know, you and even Donald Sutherland, even though like some would say his character maybe sometimes I don't know, seems a bit, you know, awkward. I really like him. I think the viewer really likes the two of them.
Well, he was wearing a toupee as well. Did you know he was actually wearing a wig?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was actually weird. And there's actually one other scene I actually quickly want to talk about, and I almost forgot to mention actually. And it's the scene in which it's basically leading up to John's death, or it's actually at his death. Do you remember the scene with a priest that's overseeing the restoration waking up out of bed?
Yeah, and I was gonna speak to you about that. How do you interpret that? Because it's almost like he gets
he's got powers himself.
Yeah, it's like he gets this vision, but then he goes back to sleep, realizing, you know, what's he look? Does he look at a candle or something?
Yes. Again, anyway, focus on red, because it's strikingly red. Yeah.
And it's like he thinks, oh, you know, all is going to be okay anyway.
Yeah.
Because he's got the faith. Maybe I
interpreted that scene. My first interpretation of that scene was, hang on a sec, has he got powers himself? Is there some kind of psychic connection himself that he has? That was kind of my interpretation. Otherwise, what is the point of that scene? Why did they show that scene?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And coming on to the bishop or the priest, what did you think of him as an actor? And
he's not an actor I'm familiar with, in fact. So I don't actually know his name. I've not actually looked into his name. He was, but again, there were little moments when we first get to meet him, and obviously Donald Sutherland's wife. I keep forgetting Julie Christie's character name.
I got it written down.
Is it Kate?
The daughters. No. Let me grab it. Grab a piece of paper a minute.
Okay, well...
It is Laura.
Laura, sorry, okay. Well, Laura, when she actually kisses the priest's ring and that, and we get this look at him, and then we get this look at kind of, I believe it's the cross around his neck, and it's all them little camera shots it does, and it kind of makes me feel a little uneasy, if that makes any sense. It's almost like they're trying to imply something's not right here, something sinister's afoot.
Maybe, yeah. I think the bishop is actually quite another creepy, you know, component of the film.
Well, he says to Donald Sutherland, he says to John, he says, what is it? I wish I didn't believe in fate, in preordained fate, but I do.
That's right, and you start to think, does he know something that he's not saying, or especially with that scene that you just said, where he sits up in bed or whatever. Yeah, so maybe there's so much going on in this film.
I think
we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up, I think. But I think Don't Look Now. It's a classic psychological horror film. It's good to see that this film does have a lot of appreciation. It might have not been a huge box office success or anything like that, but it is a film that has certainly gone on to attain a cult following. And there's actually a show that I love called The League of Gentlemen. I'm not going to go too much into it and whatever, but Reece Shearsmith, and Steve Pemberton, two of the co-writers, creators, etc., absolutely love horror. And there is actually a nod to Don't Look Now, and I believe it's in it's the third season. And there's there's actually a great nod, a little figure wearing a red coat stood next to the wall, and they turn around. And it's a great little nod to that movie.
Uh,
It really makes me laugh.
and I think there's been a few nods, as well. Obviously, I think I mentioned it earlier, but there would not have been Phenomena by Dario Argento if it wasn't for this film. It's absolutely, it's definitely took something from this film.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic. It's a film that I love. It's a film that stands out from the crowd. I haven't really seen too many films like Don't Look Now. There's films out there that might deal with certain similar themes, etc. But yeah, this film is executed really. It's just masterfully directed by Nicholas
Yeah,
Roeg.
it's a complete one-off.
Yeah.
You'll never get another film like this
I
again.
do remember, actually, just quickly, final note, I do remember reading, this was a few years ago, in fact, that there were talks of a remake to this. But
Yes,
I
I do
believe it's
remember.
been put on the scrap heap. I do believe it has actually been cancelled, thankfully.
I hope
So,
it doesn't come out.
yeah.
I hope it's never made, to be honest.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Thanks to everyone that listened. And we'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. And, yeah, take care. And I'd just like to actually give some shout outs to Matt Facci. If you're interested in horror movies, great podcast channel, Facci's Fatch Monster Cinema. I believe I've got that correct. Also, Shane St. Laurent, some great YouTube videos. Basically, everything within the world of geekdom. That's Shane St. Laurent. And Tales from the Podcast, good friend of mine, Justin Bussell, devoted to Tales from the Crypt, one of the best horror anthology shows of all time. And Zoe Crawford, a great YouTuber, some great content, everything again within the world of geekdom, horror, all comic book stuff, etc. And also, hello, this is the Doom Show, which I'm actually going to be doing. There's actually a couple of these, at least 2-3 of these. I'm actually going to be doing collaborations with soon. Hello, this is the Doom Show. They specialise in horror, mainly giallo and slashers, I believe. And also a friend of mine, Matt Nemeth, entertainmenttalk.org. For film reviews, game reviews, and if you're into stop motion animation, stop motion films, my friend Dean Mallison, Dean Mallison Films. That's Mallison. So that's it for today, and thanks a lot to everyone that listened, and take care.